And we are live. Welcome to the Impact Money Show, broadcasting on your TVs in Texas and Louisiana on the Smart Money Culture Network, TV network, as well as around the world. I am in Paris right now, beautiful Paris. David is in Dublin. Matt Dixon will be joining us from Dubai. The markets are looking nice this morning, huh?
Yes, healthy, inflated, and ready to rock and roll for the week.
Healthy, inflated, and ready to rock and roll for the week. We have CPI numbers coming out on Wednesday, I believe, the 10th. I believe that's Wednesday. And that's something that Matt's going to touch on, of course, a little bit. Matt Dixon, the great Matt Dixon, who will be joining us. The U.S. dollar is actually up as well, not by much, but it is up. And that, of course, has to do with the Fed coming out and saying that interest rates probably are not going to be lowered anytime soon. And of course, there is the chance that they may even go up from here. Really kind of hard to say as that falls out. Of course, Matt will have some more on that soon. I am here in Paris to cover the Paris Blockchain Week. I'm switching apartments today, so I was gonna do the shot live down there at the Louvre. The Louvre is so nice. It's so nice. It's like so nice. Paris is so nice. People don't realize it. Oh, Paris, it's fallen. It's blah blah blah, whatever they want to say. Guys, I'll tell you this. Sadly, to my American friends, whatever you see on your TV or whatever else you think about what's going on here in Europe, it's worse in the U.S. I hate to break it to you, but it's worse. It's worse for us. It is. It is. I don't know. I guess maybe they started doing it earlier or something, but it's worse. But anyway, very beautiful here. It's absolutely wonderful. Having a great time. Bitcoin is on a nice surge. Gold on a nice surge. Gold is, I think, trading at all-time highs. Silver as well, nearing $30 right now, $27 and almost $28. When we first started doing the show a few months ago, I think it was like $19 or something like that. That is a big surge. Gold as well was flirting around the 2,000 range, up nearly at $2,400. Those are big moves. Of course, Bitcoin as well. The mighty Bitcoin is surging too. I'm just going to share my screen here while I talk a little bit because I have the DXY pulled up right here. Share screen. U.S. dollar index. So you can see up slightly as we enter into the week. It will be interesting to see what comes out of these numbers, right? From the CPI numbers. That's the core inflation. Matt's going to talk a little bit more about that, but you can see here the DXY as well. I believe I have them up here. US to Euro. I toggled that to, let's see, 1 day. Anyway, it's up slightly. It didn't toggle right for me, I don't think. Yeah. If you look at the month, see it? Okay. And that's the US to Euro, of course. British pound. That looks like we are up on a little bit on the British pound as well. So we'll see how that is. Of course, they are printing so much money now. They're really just printing so much money, and there's so many factors going on. Of course, you have this war, just ongoing war around the world. It's pretty rough to deal with. Of course, you have what's going on in Israel. Just tens of thousands of people dead. I hate to see that stuff as well. You have what's going on in Ukraine, Eastern Europe there. Very, very sad. And it looks like now Iran has threatened that it's going to, really retaliate a lot. And that has caused a bit of a pullback with Israel pulling most of its or a lot of its troops out of Gaza, but they're still bombing. It's really just they're still bombing Rafah and other places. It's really just kind of lip service until something really happens. But I really, I hope that doesn't happen. I really hope it doesn't happen. Oil down slightly here. It's still trading at 86.07. If you can remember, we were down in the 70s a couple of weeks ago, 76, 78, 79 in there, that range. So this is quite a big move that we're holding some gains up here. It just toggled to 86.5. So that's interesting. Natural gas. Yeah, I'll just pull in on the oil chart here so we can see that a little better. Yeah, down about 1%, but still very high. You can see on the year here, we are going back up, or even look on the 6 months, 3 month. So that, of course, as we always talk about, that makes your goods and services, that makes everything cost more. Everything. That makes everything cost more. Good morning. Good morning. You're not too late. Not too late. And I'll tell you what, you're not too late for as well. Gold and silver and these things, guys, go to atcostmetals.com. Use referral link clubs with an S. Sign up. You can get gold, silver, palladium, platinum at cost. Pay what the dealers pay. Okay, and that's you. It's like $100 or something, whatever it is, to join the club, and then you get that for 1 year. So there's a lot of advantages there. That is atcostmetals.com. Referral ID is clubs. You can also go to atcostmetal.clubs or .club, atcostmetals.club, and if that works, that'll take you right there too. But you want that referral link in clubs there. That is heating up. They're still going through some of the stuff, but it is off the ground. People are buying gold and silver. You should really check that out as we move forward. Really, the markets, the crypto markets are really just something to look at today. As I toggle over to the mighty Bitcoin, just dipped under 72. It was above 72 here, up almost 4% on the day. Bitcoin is just charging on through. Ethereum up 7% on the 24-hour. Check that out. 36.21. We may have just had our little dip here, and that might be all you get, folks. Solana 182, 183 in there, 183 up about 2%. Was up a little higher. It's kind of messing around right now. The doggy coin. 20 cents again, up 6% on the day. I love the doggy coin. I love my Litecoins too. Where's Litecoin? Litecoin is the right coin. Where is Litecoin? Litecoin. Come on. Where is it? There. Oh, man, it should be way higher than this. 105, up 2% on the day. Of course, this had a really nice dip over the last month or so. Came down in here into the 79, 77s in there, that range. Really nice. Pretty excited week. I'm going to pull in our main man, Matt Dixon, in a minute. He's going to talk more about the markets. I am here, of course, covering Paris Blockchain Week. A very important event as it's staging out. I put out a video yesterday, which I'm going to actually share that. Or actually, I don't even have to share it. I could share it. Why not? I'll share it. I put out a video yesterday, and I talked about how the central bank took over Europe without firing a shot, and how they did it. And a lot of people thought it was quite interesting the way I had simplified it. So I'm going to play that right now. Sometimes back in Paris, here to cover Paris Blockchain Week. Very important event here. Everybody pretty much is going to be here. I am at the museum, the Louvre Museum, or Museum des Louvre, as they call it here in France. One of the things I've been talking about over all these years that we have been friends and have been broadcasting is the monetary revolution and how important it is. What I wanted to touch on is, of course, I'll cover a lot of things over the next few days. I'll talk to a lot of people and bring you a lot of very interesting projects and technology and everything else. But the underlying message that I always have is the monetary revolution. And it's very interesting. And one of the ways that I understand really so much about the monetary revolution is what I saw happen in Europe. So I was lucky enough to start traveling a few decades ago, before the euro was enacted, before they started doing the euro.
I was traveling around Europe, very, very cheap, very wonderful, still very beautiful. I mean, it's unbelievable here. You can just see behind me. It's just absolutely unbelievable. But the central banking cartel was able to conquer all of Europe without firing a shot. And how did they do that? How did they pull that off? It was very simple. And understanding this and seeing it happen is really important. It's something I want you guys to understand as well. I know many of you probably do. They did it with the currency. It was very simple. So they said, come on to our currency. Come on to our currency. We'll give you free money. We'll finance the things that you want to finance. Is really the same way as well. The U.S. got on the Federal Reserve System. We were having issues there, and the central bank said, no problem. We'll bail you out. We'll give you all the money that you need. Okay. And then in the dark of night, they passed the Federal Reserve Act. Which now we have a privately held central bank. But back to Europe and what happened here and what I witnessed happened here. It was the slow boil like we experience all over the world, right? These people operate in decades and centuries. It's very interesting, really, how many decades and whatnot that it takes sometimes. I guess, though, I was fairly quick. But they started, okay, we'll give you free money. We will finance what you want. Just come on to the euro. Come on to the euro system. And this euro, of course, is paper money, right? They can print whatever they want of it. And remember, the central bank doesn't produce anything other than paper money. I mean, obviously, they make the monetary policy, interest rates, stuff like this. There's some market making that goes on there. But overall, it's not like they're producing anything really that makes money. It's like the government. The government really doesn't make money. They're not good at making money. So when the central bank says that they're going to pay for stuff, all they're doing is diluting you in order to pay for it. So they'll print up more money. They'll pay for whatever you want. They'll pay for their enormous salaries, as well as everything else that they do. They'll pay for all types of wars and government spending and everything like that. But all they're doing is taking it from you. There's no real value there. And then once that they have the people on the dole, they're able to then put people in power and, of course, influence policy, right? So now you have a situation where everybody's beholden to the central bank. You have pretty much all of Europe on this euro system, and now they have a new government. And what is that new government? Of course, they have a parliament and they have blah, 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 and everything else, but the new government is the central bank. That's who is in charge, and that was how they were able to take over the entirety of Europe, and they did it by stealing the people's money slowly. They stole it slowly, so it wasn't so obvious for everybody. And at first it was so nice, and they had, this and that and the other. But now you go to Europe, it's much more expensive. And they're doing the same thing that we do. They just print up more and more money. And when they print up more and more money, that, of course, dilutes your holdings and makes you worth less. And that's the way it works. It's the biggest scam in the world. They've done it very successfully over almost all of these countries. Russia still doesn't use a central bank. And as well, we have Syria that doesn't use a central bank. Gaddafi tried it. They killed him. But yeah, pretty interesting. And that's how Europe fell without a shot. There is a central government, obviously, now in Europe. You have the European Union. And they are in charge. They're in charge of all of these countries. And the central bank, the European central bank, is in charge of them. And that is the same central banking cartels that runs the country in the United States and Brazil and all the other countries of the world. It was a big scam. We have to stop it. We can stop it. It's not going to be easy. But we'll talk about it more on the show tomorrow, on the Impact Money Show. We're going to bring you a lot of great interviews. We're super excited about it, here to be at Paris Blockchain Week. Back in Paris, beautiful Paris. I mean, absolutely is just unbelievable place. Paris is so beautiful. See you soon.
Paris is just so beautiful. It really is just so beautiful. It really is. So I decided a little bit of what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to record little parts of the city as well and share that with you. So I ended up, the Moulin Rouge area and everything. It's just really cool. And the city's big. It's very big. So really cool place. But yeah, that's how Europe fell without a shot. Of course, Elon now is taking on Brazil. The Supreme Court has they've kicked Twitter out of Brazil, and they're asking for huge fines and demanding that they censor different political people. Elon has said no, told everybody to download VPN so that they can still access Twitter. Still access X. So we'll talk more about that. Let's bring on the great Matt Dixon. Matt, how are you, sir? Let's hear you. How are you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Morning, David. Morning, Bruce. That looks fantastic, Bruce. Your trip around Europe, amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it really is. It really is a lot of fun. Europe is so beautiful. I mean, it really is. They just, the cities the cities are unbelievable. The cobblestone, the people are wonderful. It makes me want to go and learn French and learn Italian and some of these other languages. So I'm not. So I'm a little more versatile, but I'm very American.
Did you actually see the tunnel through the mountain? The Italy tunnel in the First World War.
No, I didn't, but it came up. And I look at this, and I definitely want to go see it as well. It is in that area that we were in there in Venice, where my wife's family is from. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, looks amazing. Anyway, I'll do my usual and just jump into share screen mode.
Awesome.
So let's see, I think we're already there, and I'll jump straight into. I've got a Market Watch screen there. Can you see that?
Yes, sir.
Great. So it's quite interesting. We've got inflation coming up on, I think it's Wednesday, inflation figures out of the US.
Yeah.
And you can see here that the core rate is expected to drop slightly. That is excluding food and energy, which is a bit odd because they're things that we spend most on probably.
Right.
But the inflation rate is actually expected to rise from 3.2 to 3.4. So we're now seeing it ticking up to what it was last December, and that itself was a high since the previous September. There's a bit of a concern that inflation is beginning to pick up in the US. So it'll be very important just to see, because the latest strong figures we had out of the US, things like the employment figures, they were a lot stronger than expected. And so the US economy, they're saying it's potentially overheating a bit. So that's a major concern. So obviously we've got the FOMC minutes coming up now, less than a month away, well less, only about 3 weeks away now, till the next FOMC meeting where they decide interest rates. Now, because of this strong data, the Federal Reserve Chairman, Jerome Powell, was earlier talking about reducing interest rates. Possibly he was talking from June, and that's now extremely unlikely because the US economy has proved to be stronger than expected in certain key important areas. So this May meeting, there's now only about a 6% chance that they're going to change interest rates. So in other words, almost 94% chance that rates will stay on hold at 5.5%. So no change coming. So they're still going to be data dependent, and they're still waiting to see what happens with the economy. But with that, this is a chart I got just looking at the probability of recession. We can actually see, even though we've had a bit of a tail off in this, there's still well more than a 50% chance of recession coming in the US. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. We've got strong figures coming out with employment, PCE, inflation, and a number of different things. Strong figures coming out, and yet there's this chance of recession, strong chance of recession, more than 50%, because there's a lot of warning signs out there, like yield inversion, like money supply. There's all sorts of signs actually saying recession's on the way. So we've got way more than 50% chance of recession, which is a difficult situation for the Fed, because with all these high levels of inflation, they actually probably should be raising rates. But if the economy were to dip into recession, then obviously they would want to lower rates. So they really have their hands a little bit tied. So it's causing them a big problem to manage the economy. And we've seen a similar chart to this I've shown many times when we see employment lows. And this is one of the things, one of the signs that came out the other day. We got very, very strong employment figures. And that was caused the dollar to rally. It caused interest rate expectations, to effectively interest rates stay higher for longer. So when we see, every time, I've said this many times over, when we see a cycle low in unemployment, it is always has been immediately followed by a recession. And the recession's these little grey areas. And I keep showing this because it is very, very important, because it's every single time that we see a cycle low in unemployment. So we see it here in 1949 and here, every single time, basically. I don't need to go through all of them, but the last recession we saw was the COVID recession. So that was kind of artificial, but even so, it coincided with a cycle low in unemployment. And then again, we're now seeing this isn't quite up to date. If we go on to 2024, we're again seeing a real cycle low in unemployment. And so that means we're at the extreme. And when that happens, we should be followed by a grey area, which means recession. So it looks as though recession is coming to the US. And this is quite interesting, just to look at what recession might mean to the actual markets. And there is some correlation. So for example, these are all what they call bear markets. A bear market is defined as when there's a more than 20% drop in the index. Here we're looking at the S&P 500 index. When there's a 20% plus fall, they're calling that a bear market, basically. And we can see many occasions this has happened. So the average bear market without recession has been a 29% fall, but the average bear market with recession has been a 42% fall. So what we're saying is, if we're headed towards a bear market, which is actually, is very much on the cards, we don't know when, but it's sometime, I believe, probably later this year, that we might see the next bear market. And what they're saying is, if this coincides with recession, then the average stock market fall is 42%. So you can see that's very substantial fall. So there's quite a correlation there between recessions and between the size of the stock market fall. And in fact, these bear markets have coincided with recession on 14 occasions previously. So here's just another interesting one, just looking at the consumer price index, so CPI, again, relating it to recession. So we can see the recession areas in grey. And this, again, we're beginning to see a bit of a low in CPI, but once you see a low in CPI, things are beginning to potentially turn around. When they turn around, then you normally expect to see recession. So actually CPI is falling. We can see it's fallen quite sharply. So it's actually when the CPI falls, it normally coincides with recession. So they're hoping and expecting CPI to fall, which means they can lower interest rates, but they would lower interest rates only if they're afraid of recession, or if recession has started. And so it's highly likely the recession is coming later in 2024. So we'll just switch over to the charts of the day, just to look at what's been happening in crypto, because there's been some real interesting moves. And this was expected. We said that this was all corrective before. The correction may have been complete here, or it may be a larger correction, but we said if you follow the X tweets that have been put out since our last show and over the weekend, I was saying very strongly that we expected the market was in a very quiet area. And in fact, if we have a quick look at the ratings, I did note that the ratings, this is the eBay ratings, which rates crypto assets using artificial intelligence. I noted that they were very flat. There were no particularly big moves in the ratings, changes in the ratings. That's telling us that the market is likely consolidating and expecting a breakout. Now, the breakout can be to the upside or the downside. You can never be absolutely certain, although we did indicate that the expectation, especially looking at some volume. So one of the really interesting ones was Ripple, or XRP, I should say, really, that had a big change in volume. So just doing a quick drill down into XRP here, we can see that the 24-hour volume has picked up 62%. And that is higher than all of the other tokens on this page. So this drill down is really interesting, telling us, and I did mention this on the last show, I think, that there's real institutional whale interest here going on behind the scenes with XRP. The price hadn't yet moved because all the ratings are pretty flat, but it's telling us that maybe a big move is afoot. And I am aware that there's supposed to be an SEC decision coming out on this coming Thursday on the 11th of April. So maybe we're beginning to just build up for a move ahead of that. So that'll be quite interesting. But then just flipping back to the charts, as I say, we saw Bitcoin today spike above. This was a resistance area around here, previous highs. We actually blasted straight through it, right up to the 72. In fact, it's well into the 72,000 area. We're still above 72,000 now. So we blasted through that. The next overhead resistance will be the previous all-time high, which was here at about 73.7, somewhere around there. So we're very, very close to that. Now, if we were to break through that convincingly, that should really open up the market to potentially a lot higher. But it may be that we're just seeing, we'll see a further correction, maybe a bit of downside. Depends probably a lot on what's going to happen with the CPI figures out on Wednesday. So maybe we'll pull back further. But what this is telling us is that the move down was in 3 waves and they're all overlapping. So even if we get a further move down, it is telling us that we're strongly, very, very strong possibility we're going to see new all-time high. Even if it corrects down further, we're likely to see new all-time highs. Very strong expectation, because this is just 3 waves down. And even if this is 1, 2, even if this is 3 waves higher, we would expect some downward movement, but following that, new highs. So anybody who's hanging on, hodling Bitcoin, I think is in a reasonably safe situation, as long as you're not leveraged, because these crypto markets can be very volatile. We could see a potential, you could see a short-term negative move in crypto, depending on what happens with CPI, or maybe what's going on in the Middle East. As Bruce said when he was just delivering the news before, I know that Iran are supposedly deliberating over what action they're going to take over Israel bombing the consulate in Syria, the Iranian consulate grounds in Syria. So Iran are planning some sort of retaliation, but I understand that they're looking for not to escalate matters too much. They just want to basically show some level of retaliation, but I understand they don't want to escalate matters. So it may be a measured response, so it may not be too much of an effect on the market, but it's always a worry. It really is a worry. There's so much bubbling away there in the Middle East that things could blow up at any time. But as I say, even if we get a pullback, we should see new all-time highs coming reasonably soon on Bitcoin. But it's just very, very dangerous if you're leveraged in these situations, because even a modest pullback without too much leverage can potentially wipe you out. So a couple of the other things, we've seen gold obviously reach new all-time highs yet again. Yeah. And that's telling us that inflation is a worry, because gold is the hedge against inflation. And so we're seeing that, and there's actually no sign of it stopping at the moment. I mean, we passed the 100% extension of a previous move. So the next target would probably be the 1.618, which is much higher on gold. So the worry right now in the markets is inflation. That's the number one worry. CPI will tell us if that's going to continue for the time being to be a worry. But gold is telling us that inflation is what the markets are worried about. And people want to pile into gold when there's inflation. And we can look very briefly at the DXY. This is dollar index. Again, we broke above that previous overhead resistance, which is now support. We're pretty well touching support right now. If I were to open that up a little bit, you'll probably see that we are touching support again, almost touching support here. So we'll just see what happens. Again, that will be very much dependent on what happens with CPI, I think, as to where the US dollar goes. And oil again, oil has been pushing up. I mean, we're at $86 now. I know we're a little bit higher, but it's still looking very constructive to the upside. So what with geopolitical issues in the Middle East, and still there's a drone attack again, I think, in Ukraine, wasn't there, from Russia? So there's still a lot of things going on there geopolitically, but also the macroeconomics. If inflation continues to be a problem, and actually oil is probably one of the big drivers of inflation. So if the oil price continues to increase, then it's putting pressure on the macroeconomic situation, pressure for prices escalating, as we said, fuels everything, whether it be transport, whether it be heating, so manufacture, whatever it is. If the fuel price goes up, the price of everything else goes up. And so it's a big driver of inflation. And so these things are all very much interrelated. And we can see that oil price has been really growing and growing. It's been building. So there's no sign of that stopping at the moment. Solana has been a really interesting one. It's surprisingly, it's actually had a really good boost this morning. It jumped up quite a lot. I say surprisingly because Solana has had a lot of the transactions fail. I think as much as 70% of the transactions failing because the Solana network has been very, very much overloaded because it's the network that all the meme coins, and when I say all, many of these meme coins are launched on. And we've seen massive volumes, massive activity there. And the Solana network has not been able to keep up. And so effectively, it's not entirely crashed, but many of the transactions, as I say, 70%, 77% reportedly have not gone through. Now, the Solana Foundation say that a lot of these are not genuine transactions. They're bots or robots, effectively arbitraging between different platforms. They say they're not real transactions. And so that's their excuse. But it is a bit of a concern. But surprisingly, the Solana price has taken it very much in its stride, and we got a really strong push up this morning. A little bit like Bitcoin, we potentially could see lower, or we could just continue to push up from here. But it's entirely possible that we could see a further push lower before we push to the upside. But again, this looks to be very corrective to the downside, everything overlapping. So we can see this wave price here overlapping this move down here. So it's very much overlapping to the downside. So that's telling us this is what's called a corrective move to the downside. So we would likely see more impulsive movement to the upside to take us to new highs above this recent local high of $210 for Solana. So whilst there may be a few problems, I know there's still some upgrades to come through, some big upgrades, which hopefully will make Solana a lot more scalable and many more transactions per second and so on. So Solana is still looking quite a good one. Doge, as Bruce said, is looking really strong, 3.8%, depending on when you start your count.
The doggy. It is looking good, isn't it? I mean, just a crowd favorite.
Looking very good. And again, it's looking really good, to be honest. And so is Litecoin, again, another of your favorites here.
Litecoin is the right coin.
Yeah, just looking at that movement up. Again, this movement from the top down is purely corrective. We've not even reached a low below this move here. So it's looking very positive and constructive for Litecoin. And we can see there a couple of targets that I've got overhead, between 120, 129, but we could even just surpass that. A little bit like gold passed through the 100% and looking at 1.618 next. The same thing potentially with Litecoin. We've seen an A, we've seen a B, and the C wave could be 100% of A. That would be in this sort of region here, or we could extend further 1.618. So we could go all the way to 148. So it's looking very positive. Another one being very much in the news is XRP that I mentioned before that, there's been an awful lot of volume in XRP, and yet the price didn't move a great deal. But they launched a new stablecoin the other day. I think it was last Thursday, if I'm right. They launched the stablecoin, didn't have a massive impact on price, and probably I wouldn't expect it to have. But maybe this Thursday, with the SEC ruling, and maybe we get a bit of clarity at long last. If we get clarity, then potentially XRP could really pump. But obviously, it depends very much on what the flavor of that news is. But if it's positive news, you really could see a strong move up in XRP. And the movement down so far appears to have been very much corrective. And so we could see a real strong pump to the upside. So I'm hopeful with XRP. And as we know, it's one of those tokens which when it moves, it really moves. So that's right, a lot of potential there for upside.
And then once it's done moving, it's a great one to short.
Potentially, but it's also a dangerous one to short.
It is so dangerous. I've been caught and done well on it.
The thing is with shorting, it's I'm really very much afraid of shorting in the crypto market because crypto can be very, very volatile and massively break. I mean, I'm actually really wary of leveraging in any way with cryptocurrency because it can be so aggressive, and you can actually see a 50% move. So even a 2 times leverage, you can be wiped out. These sort of things can happen. You could see, honestly, XRP double here, and if you went short, you could be completely wiped out. And with a short, you've actually got potentially infinite losses. When I say infinite losses, assuming you're limited to what you've got on balance, so you could lose all your money easily. If you're leveraged long, then you're at least limited to what you've invested, but potentially, theoretically, you can lose more than you invested if you're leveraged short on a crypto. It just depends what contract, who you're dealing with, what platform you have in place. So leveraging short is dangerous. Leveraging altogether is very dangerous in crypto, in my opinion. Leveraging short is even more dangerous. It's quite good. We're seeing everything, absolutely everything in terms of crypto, including eBay, is looking positive today. The only things we're seeing so far negative, and I'm sure this will turn positive when the market opens, is the SPX, that's the S&P 500. I believe that will turn positive. Oil is fractionally negative, but again, overall, it's looking a really positive day, and that was what we hoped for and anticipated, and it's coming to fruition. So there's plenty more we can look at, but so far that's a good wrap for the day. I think, let's hope it continues throughout the week. Let's hope CPI is within reason, meets expectations, and then we can continue to look for more positive. So Bitcoin could, if it breaks through its previous all-time high, we could see a real blast higher with Bitcoin. We could be seeing next stop could be 100,000. Who knows? We're not guaranteeing, we're not predicting, but it's entirely possible. And we could see those flows really reignite back into the ETFs again to start, growing the demand. And we still got that halving coming up now. The countdown to halving. So very, very soon we're going to see the Bitcoin halving, which means the supply of new Bitcoin will halve, and we've already got big demand with the ETFs. So far the future is looking bright.
It is, right? It is looking nice and rosy. I will say that a lot of times before a big conference like Paris Blockchain Week, you have the numbers go way up, and then at the end they go down. So keep track of that. There's a nice storm there too with the CPI data. There's some things that could happen there. So like Matt said, be careful on your leverage, but things are looking good right now. Yeah,
Jupe is actually quite an interesting one as well. They're actually a Solana DEX. They're really interesting, very low fees, very exciting potential there. They're actually up just about 7% today.
What's that? You
sorry?
Said? Or Jupe. Okay.
Yeah, it's Jupiter. Yeah, so Jupe is. Yeah.
Well, that's a very nice arbitrage type of system they have set up on that thing, right?
I mean, there's plenty of opportunity for arbitrage. It's basically the cheapest DEX out there, as far as I'm aware. The fees are really, really attractive, and it's a Solana DEX. So that's what we're talking about with a lot of these arbitrage transactions. Will be probably going through Jupe, and that's what I say. A lot of them have been rejected or failed to go through, and that's why I actually thought we'd see a downturn in Solana because of that news. I'm really surprised. We're up over 2% today. So I guess people are just getting used to it, and they know that I think Solana will be dealing with these issues as they have in the past. We've had many interruptions in the past. I think there's only one interruption last year. This is now probably 2 interruptions if you can count this one. So, but the price doesn't seem to affect price. So the outlook for Solana as being the next major retail chain of choice is really positive. And as I say, Jupe or Jupiter is probably a really interesting one to look at as well. So if Solana is the chain of choice, then a lot of business is going to go through Jupiter, and so that's why the price is pumping. It's one of the biggest rises today. The only bigger one I can see is Near Protocol, up 8% today.
And Doggy, right? How much is the Doggy up?
Well, as we always say, it just depends when you're timing it from. But these are all timed from the same point. So doggy here is up 4.3% today.
Got it.
But
Yeah.
if you timed it from a different start point, it would be different, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, very good. I mean, overall, the market's looking pretty good. They're going to continue to print money. That is for absolute certain. I talked a little bit. I broke down how the central bank had really taken over Europe and how they've taken over control over a lot of the different countries. And the way they keep that control is by printing money. So they're going to continue to do that.
Yeah, and it's kind of been Germany in control of that quite a lot, because Germany were the one country that had that very highest level of productivity. And this euro is really in their interest, because it basically meant that all the countries across Europe were in this euro with one level of interest rates. And so it actually meant that the southern med countries were far less competitive, and they couldn't lower interest rates. They couldn't devalue to make themselves more competitive, because they're fixed in this euro system, one size fits all system. And it was
Right.
always built really to suit the German economy. So they kept interest rates, at a level which was probably not particularly attractive for southern med countries. And that's why we saw, it's quite a few years ago now, where we saw Greece and Cyprus, particularly Cyprus, wasn't it, that got under massive financial strain, had to be bailed out. And they also had to exercise those special measures where they actually raided people's bank accounts. So I know you're always talking about what the central banks do, but they actually raided people's bank accounts to bail them out.
Like, they didn't even just print the more money; they took it away from the people as well.
Yeah. So it was terrible, really, to see that, and it just shows you that maybe things like Bitcoin, it's another big reason why you should have some money in Bitcoin, because they can't just raid your Bitcoin account.
This is what we're always saying, guys. You want to, even gold, they can come right to wherever the gold is. I mean, you're not going to have more than $250,000 of gold or something sitting at your house. They can easily take it. So with Bitcoins, you can protect yourself. Bitcoin, Litecoin, some of the older blockchains, the proof of work, Digibyte, Global Boost, these other ones. There's some more that they can't really take, but of course, Bitcoin is king.
This isn't just theoretical. It's not just saying what could possibly potentially happen. These things have happened. Gold has been confiscated, but also it's actually very, very recent memory, where they raided the bank accounts of the Cypriots.
Very recent memory there, but remember, I always talk about they confiscated all the gold in the U.S. Everybody's too young now to remember; they're not old enough. But a little over 90 years ago, or about 90 years ago exactly, they confiscated everybody's gold in the U.S. and didn't let people own gold again until the 1970s. Crazy.
Yeah, and that's what the potentials are. So that's why, one of the reasons why I guess Bitcoin came into existence anyway, was because of the abuse of centralization within the financial system. And that's why it was actually printed or encoded within the first block of Bitcoin that was ever mined, talking about the bailout, another bailout in London, basically, of the financial system, of the banks in London. And so that's why Bitcoin was actually born, how it was born in 2009, out of the ashes of the financial crisis, as something which was decentralized, that basically wasn't controlled by centralized government or central banks or anything of that sort, but actually decentralized, so actually controlled by just the people who held it and the people who mined it all around the world. And that's why Bitcoin has become so popular.
Yep. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It's a monetary revolution. I love it when we have events like the Paris Blockchain Week, when we have so many important people here. I've targeted only really the big dogs so far, so we'll see what kind of. I've already gotten some responses, but I have some really good interviews lined up. So it's interesting times that we have, and of course the common thread, and you look at even like Elon Musk with Brazil and everything like that, the common thread here is the monetary system. And that's why I say it's a monetary revolution. We have a chance here to take the power back from the central banks. The central banks have been funding all the wars. They're why we can't really change. Brazil is on these magic electronic voting machines, just like the U.S. is. And it seems like we cannot change that. It's crazy to say, but it seems impossible to change. And I think a big reason it's impossible to change is because, of course, you have the central bank in control, really, of all these different countries. Really crazy what's going on with Brazil. What are your thoughts on that, Matt?
Yeah, I think in all the countries, as I said the other day, where we've seen issues with inflation, issues with the economy, people are actually turning to Bitcoin as a solution. And so we're seeing that in many places. We've seen it in Nigeria where Bitcoin is banned, cryptocurrency is banned, and yet it's the highest use of cryptocurrency in the world. I think it's something like 47%. I think it's 47% of Nigerians actually have crypto accounts, and they use crypto for day-to-day transactions because their local currency, I mentioned the other day, the Naira, is devaluing so rapidly that people can't keep up, and they can't use it as a secure means of buying what they need, even the food or whatever they need, because by the time they go, in the next week, next month, whenever it is, the money just isn't enough. Whereas Bitcoin has not only held its value, it's actually appreciated. And so they're able to use that as a secure form of money, which for them has actually appreciated, or it's not just held its value, which is what they want and what they're not getting. And we're seeing that over and over again around the world. Wherever you look, India, I think crypto is banned in India, and again, it's probably I think it's one of the highest use rates of crypto around the world. So even when the government bans it, it doesn't mean. This just proves they can't stop it, because it's been banned in Nigeria, and yet it's got the biggest use rate in the world. It's been banned in India, and yet it's got one of the biggest use rates in the world. It was banned in Russia at one time. It was banned in China, but it just doesn't. It's unstoppable because it's the government cannot control everybody's individual laptops, computers, whatever it is they're using to mine Bitcoin to validate. So as long as the validation continues and you've got the encryption, then government can't interfere. And that's why it's so many people and countries with the democratization, and that's what this is all about, democratization rather than centralization of power. We're seeing democratization, which is where people kind of take control for themselves. And that is the problem. That's really what's brewing. The centralization, people are beginning to get a bit sick of it because they're tired of control, which puts the ordinary person down. As you say, with cryptocurrency, you have freedom, but without it, they can seize your assets, they can manipulate economic data, they can manipulate interest rates, they can manipulate the amount of debt, they can effectively put you in debt and make sure you're paying it back forever. So this is why people are looking for solutions like Brazil.
Yeah, absolutely. And what you see there, even freedom of speech, guys, the blockchain is our way out of that. It's a way to record history. That's one thing that we're working on with Global Boost. You can go to Global Boost with a dot between the O and the ST, Global Boost. It's a .st domain. Check out some of the stuff we're doing there. But this recording of history, as well as different media, putting out different media on the blockchain, decentralizing it or democratizing it, as Matt so eloquently put it, is the future. It is the way that we can take, because right now media is really controlled by basically the same central people. And so that is really scary because, of course, they only have the messages that they want getting out. Likely we have Elon Musk at the moment. I mean, God keep him safe. But without Elon, you can't really say much on Facebook, and you can't say much anywhere else. I mean, YouTube, they send me an email like almost, fairly regularly, and we don't even do anything. It's like something gets mentioned about a vaccine or something, and we're not really pushing for anything, and they're like, you said something, and then you appeal it, and they're like, okay, fine, you didn't or whatever. But I mean, the clench of censorship is like so much here, and that is the tyrants around the world that are doing that. And you saw Elon Musk He said, "Shame on you, Alejandro. Shame on you." Very strong message from the world's richest man, or one of the world's richest men. I would almost say one of the most powerful men. I would say one of the most powerful men in the world. Amazing. It really is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, we've said it over and over. Centralization is the cause of all problems, and this is where they're effectively not trusting people to take their own decisions. If they don't like X or Twitter, they don't have to use it. But surely it's just a way of disseminating information in an unbiased way, or even if it is biased, people have their own minds. They're just treating people as stupid. You can make your own decisions on these things that shouldn't be imposed by central government.
Yep. Yeah, agreed. So that's going to be interesting as everything plays forward. It's fun to be in the heart of Europe as well, to see everything. I will say, and I said it earlier in the broadcast, that I get people messaging me like, be careful of Paris. Paris is falling, all these types of things. And it's so funny because you get on the ground here, guys, and it's just so beautiful. It's such a wonderful place. Paris has not fallen. Except to the central bankers. All of Europe, though, has fallen to the central bankers. But in the last few years, you see a couple of videos. They could take a video like you saw about Paris from the Black Lives Matter protest after Trump won, play it for America and say, America has fallen. And you say, well, that looks pretty bad. But for the most part, it's wonderful here. And I can tell you, in Italy, where I just was with the family, it is just unbelievable, really. I think a lot of the times the lines of migration, they end up, of course, in the big cities because there's more money here. There's more jobs. There's more money available, everything else. Places like Portugal and Italy, they might come in there and then they're like, okay, go off to London or go off to Paris or something like that. So you do have that consolidation in the big cities. But another great show, guys.
Yeah, thank you. Been amazing. So look forward to seeing some more Paris blockchain videos.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. So I already have some good interviews lined up. Let me see here. It looks like I have at least 8 already, or 6 or 8 here. So that's going to be pretty interesting. We're going to do some cool shows, and then we'll probably have some good stuff all around. Anyway, David's blinking.
Your voice is powerful. When combined with social engagement, it's a force for change. Decentralized media paired with free speech is the catalyst for an empowered world and a unified, invaluable ecosystem. Join Global Boost, become a champion of free speech, and help to reshape the future of media.
What we have here is a monetary revolution, and it's a peaceful revolution.
And it's not just crypto, but
everything.
Where if we don't free ourselves with a decentralized, permissionless blockchain, they're going to imprison us with a centralized, permissioned one. We have to do something. And if we don't do something, they're doing things. But we're saying, we're going to hodl. We got to give some of those things we're hodling to the politicians so they like us.
And it's been going on for over a decade now.
I want to build a future we're all inspired to live in. That we understand the impact that we have on our planet and make sure that that's part of how we cost things on the immutable ledger of the blockchain. Blockchain is a way we make the world we want to live in accountable to the future generations that are right now going to be dependent on us, making sure this planet's around for them to enjoy. And it's not so much the things that we can do with it that we need to be talking about right now. What we need to be talking about is the hard questions about what should we be doing with it. How do we solve human trafficking and human slavery with the blockchain? How is it that we are able to give ourselves as humans détente against the next generation of AI? One of the things that we're committed to is built into our fee structure is a philanthropy plank. We want to be giving back to giving organizations that have the resources to be self-sustaining and building additional resources to give back, because that's the kind of economy that's going to make a difference in the future. It's not one that's always extracting value. It's one that's always adding value. It's real easy to